I had barely merged onto Highway 71 when Maria called me, crying so hard I could hear her struggling to breathe. "Ma'am," she whispered, "don't go home. Pull over and check the cameras." I took the next exit and stopped beneath a faded barbecue sign. My in-laws had been inside Austin Airport 20 minutes earlier, smiling beside their matching blue suitcases, supposedly boarding a flight to Seattle before their Alaskan cruise. My mother-in-law Judith had hugged me a little too long. "Take care of yourself, Rachel," she'd said. I thought she was being kind. I was 44, a captain in the United States Army, stationed at Fort Cavazos. 22 years of learning how to stay calm when plans fell apart. I opened the security app anyway, hands tight on the wheel. Porch, empty. Kitchen, empty. Then the living room feed. My husband Daniel was standing by the couch, his hands on another woman's waist. He kissed her slowly, comfortably, like it wasn't the first time. She wore my cream cardigan, the one I kept folded in the hallway closet. On the coffee table sat the good Cabernet my battalion commander had given me. I just watched. Then my phone slipped, and I caught it before it hit the floor. "Maria," I said when I called back. "Where are you?" "Laundry room. I came back for my pills. I thought you'd come home early." "Leave through the garage. Don't take anything but your purse." "Mrs. Morgan, I'm sorry. This isn't your fault." I saved the footage, emailed myself a copy. Training took over. Preserve the evidence. Confirm the facts. Don't move until you understand the situation. Then, on the screen, a blue suitcase rolled into frame. The same one I'd watched Judith wheel through the airport. She stepped into my living room, laughing. For a second I told myself it was an old recording glitching through. Then I saw the timestamp, live. Judith set the suitcase down while Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "I honestly thought she'd insist on walking you to security," the other woman said. Daniel shrugged. "She never questions family." That was when my stomach dropped. Not over the affair anymore, but because all three of them were laughing together. Maria had been right. This wasn't a secret. His parents knew. Maybe they'd always known. Judith glanced toward the dining room. "Did Maria leave?" "I think so," Daniel said. "She's 61. She barely notices anything." I almost laughed. Maria had probably noticed more about my marriage than I ever had. I called her back. She was driving, whispering. "I've seen that woman before," she admitted. "Maybe 6 times. Mr. Morgan always said she was a client." That sounded reasonable. 6 visits. Not a mistake. A routine. And no introduction between Judith and the woman today. They already knew each other. I replayed the footage, this time studying the room instead of Daniel. 3 coffee cups, a fresh bakery box. Someone had planned this morning. On the driveway camera, a black SUV had pulled in at 11:39. No rideshare, no airport shuttle. Harold popped the trunk. 2 small carry-ons, not 2 weeks of luggage. The big blue suitcase had been empty, a prop. They'd never intended to leave Texas. A memory surfaced. 3 months back, Judith canceling Sunday dinner for a weekend in Waco. Daniel skipping church for an important meeting. Had they all been together the whole time? My phone buzzed. "Daniel. Hope your drive back is safe. Love you." I typed back. "Just left Austin. See you tonight." On the feed, he sent that message with one hand and kissed the woman with the other. Then Judith walked over, holding a thick manila envelope, written across the front in black marker. Attorney. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes before I could turn the key. Then I called my executive officer, told him I had a family emergency, and drove straight to Austin instead of home. To Linda Brooks, a divorce attorney a fellow officer had once recommended. Linda was calm, sharp, unshockable. She watched the footage without reacting until the envelope appeared. Pause it. Zoom in. Attorney. "They're organized," she said. "Not the affair. Whatever they're planning." She handed me a legal pad. "Think like an investigator, not a wife." We built a timeline, Daniel insisting on paperless billing 6 months earlier to save clutter, Judith offering to keep our house documents in her fireproof safe, just in case. At the time, it sounded thoughtful. Now it sounded calculated. Her only instruction before I left: don't confront anyone. If they're preparing for divorce, they'll expect anger. What they won't expect is a patient woman collecting evidence. Driving home, Daniel called, cheerful. Mom and Dad just landed. 2 hours after I'd watched them eat lunch in my dining room. 3 impossible stories from one very confident liar. If he could lie that easily about something I could verify, what else was he hiding? That night I logged into our joint investment account for the first time in months. Nearly $186,000 was gone. Not withdrawn all at once, but bled out over 8 months in small transfers labeled portfolio adjustment, asset reallocation. I screenshotted everything, while Daniel hummed in the shower upstairs. An hour earlier, he'd kissed my forehead and asked if I wanted grilled salmon. I'd said that sounds nice. The words tasted like cardboard. The next day, Linda's team pulled property records. 3 parcels in Bell County, our home, a rental, and a lake cabin outside Burnett I'd never heard of. Daniel had transferred it to Judith 6 weeks earlier, for $1. You don't sell a lake house for $1, Linda said. You hide it. I met Maria at a cafe in Harker Heights. She looked wrecked with guilt. I've worked for your family 10 years. No, I told her. You've worked for me. For the first time in days, I felt something besides anger. Gratitude. Without her, I'd still be living inside Daniel's illusion. Life on base kept moving. Formations, readiness reports, a lieutenant complaining about a late supply shipment, while my marriage quietly collapsed behind it. Somehow the routine helped. The Army didn't care about any of this. It just expected me to do my job, and I still could. Friday evening, Linda called with good news and bad. Daniel planned to file for divorce, but not yet. He was waiting until after my 6-week training rotation to Fort Irwin, betting I'd be too far away and too overwhelmed to fight. I don't think he realizes, Linda said. You've already changed the game. For 2 weeks, I lived a double life, smiling over dinner, folding his laundry, watching old shows on the couch, letting him hold my hand, all so he'd keep believing I knew nothing. By day, I built the case with Linda, receipts, transfers, lies, stacked like puzzle pieces without a picture on the box. Then Linda called with something worse than the affair, a sworn statement Daniel had filed months earlier for a business loan, claiming I was frequently absent due to military obligations, and had effectively abandoned the marital relationship. 2 deployments in 18 years, both under 9 months, and he'd rewritten our entire marriage on paper. I drove to our church that evening, not for service, just to sit. Pastor Allen found me and, gently, admitted Daniel had told him military life had changed me, that I was never home, that he'd asked the congregation to pray I'd find my way back to my family. Strangers had been praying for a problem that never existed. Daniel hadn't just lied to me, he'd lied about me. The next revelation, over $140,000 of the missing money had gone straight into the cabin. New dock, remodeled kitchen, custom furniture, invoiced before ownership quietly passed to Judith. I'd helped pay for a house that wasn't even legally mine. That weekend, Daniel proposed a family barbecue once his parents were back from their vacation. I almost laughed at the word. Then Linda texted one line. We found someone willing to talk, and it's not who you think. It was Emily Carter, 38, a pharmaceutical rep from Waco. When I called her, she said simply, I've been wondering when you'd find me. At Linda's office, she sat across from me, with no excuses, just, I didn't know he was still your husband. He said the divorce was finished last winter, that you'd refused to sign, that you'd moved to base permanently, that you hadn't shared a bedroom in 3 years. She'd even asked why he still wore his ring. He told her removing it would create problems with clients. I laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. It sounded exactly like him. Worse, Emily had met Judith and Harold multiple times. Daniel had introduced her as the woman he'd marry after the divorce. They'd invited her to Thanksgiving, the same Thanksgiving I'd spent coordinating flood relief at Fort Bliss, while Daniel told me his parents wanted a quiet holiday. Then Linda asked if Emily would testify. She hesitated, staring out the window, then said yes, because the day before, she'd learned Daniel had proposed to another woman entirely. 3 women, none of them knowing about the others. Linda, 32 years into this work, said she'd never seen a man destroy his own case so thoroughly. By August, the deposition was set. Linda's only instruction: say as little as possible. Daniel walked in, wearing the navy sport coat I'd bought him for our 15th anniversary, all confidence, telling his attorney he barely knew anyone by that name. Linda slid across a photo of him and Emily hand in hand at a farmer's market, then dinner at a steakhouse, a weekend at Lake Travis, a kiss outside a hotel, a business acquaintance, Daniel tried. Linda played a recording. Emily's voice. You told me the divorce was finished before Christmas. And Daniel's own. I know, I just haven't taken the ring off yet. Silence. Then came the cabin, the dollar sale, the invoices with his signature, each met with, I don't recall. Finally, Linda asked how many romantic relationships he'd had in the past year. He said 1. That was when the door opened and Emily walked in, having waited outside the whole time. She looked at him and asked the only question left. Which one of us were you planning to marry? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The hearing was set for a September morning at the Bell County Courthouse. I wore my Army service uniform, not to impress anyone, but because it was the thing Daniel had spent months trying to discredit. Inside, Judith wouldn't look at me. Harold managed one small nod. Maria testified first, terrified but steady. I cleaned that house every week for 10 years, she told Daniel's attorney when he tried to twist her story. I know the difference between greeting someone and kissing them. Emily testified next, admitting her mistakes without excusing them. Then came the evidence: texts, emails, financial records, and finally the security footage, played for the whole courtroom. Daniel and the affair, Judith's suitcase, the envelope, Harold loading boxes into his truck over quiet weekends, all matched against bank records of the same dates. On cross-examination, Linda asked Daniel to explain why he'd texted me that his parents had safely landed in Seattle, while the footage showed all 3 of them eating takeout in my dining room. The room went dead silent. He had nowhere left to hide. The judge recessed for lunch. Linda and I sat in a diner across the street, where I couldn't taste the food. I thought I'd feel angry, I told her. Mostly I just feel tired. Somewhere between the airport parking lot and that diner booth, revenge had quietly stopped being the goal. I didn't need Daniel to suffer. I needed the truth to matter. When court resumed, Judge Watkins ruled from a thick folder, overwhelming evidence that Daniel had concealed marital assets, misrepresented finances, and transferred property in anticipation of divorce. The cabin sale was declared a fraudulent conveyance, reverting immediately to the marital estate. He was ordered to repay the missing investment funds and the cabin renovations, and I was awarded the house in Killeen. Daniel kept his business, but only after a heavy settlement and most of the legal fees, a penalty for his conduct during discovery. Then the judge looked at him directly. Marriage sometimes fails. Dishonesty is what turned this case into something far more serious. Outside, Daniel walked to his car without a word. Harold lingered. I should have stopped this, he said. It became my business the day I stayed quiet. I told him I hoped he found peace. He said the same to me, and left. Before we reached the parking garage, I told Linda what I wanted to do next. Pay off Maria's mortgage. 10 years of quiet care deserved more than a court order could give. 6 months later, I drove that same stretch of Highway 71 back to the airport. Not rushing this time, just picking up my sister Claire for Thanksgiving. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The airport didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like survival. I was still at Fort Cavazos, recently promoted, still starting every day with coffee before sunrise, and a briefing that somehow always came with too much paperwork. It wasn't glamorous. It was honest, and after everything, honest felt like a gift. Maria still worked for me, though by now, we both just called her family. The day the divorce finalized, I handed her an envelope with her mortgage paid in full. She cried before she finished reading it. "You did what many people are afraid to do," I told her. "You told the truth." She still brings tamales every Christmas Eve. I still pretend to argue about it. As for Daniel, I stopped checking. His business lost clients once the divorce went public. The cabin sold. He moved into an apartment outside Temple. Whether he found happiness after that, I don't know, and for the first time in a long while, I realized I didn't care. That wasn't bitterness, it was freedom. Once a month now, I sit in on a support group for military spouses going through divorce. I don't pretend to have the answers. I just tell my story. One afternoon, a woman stayed behind and asked how I'd stopped wanting revenge. "I didn't," I told her. "I just realized that wasn't what I actually wanted." "What did you want?" "The truth." And once it had the chance to speak for itself, I didn't have to carry the anger anymore. Watching Claire come through the terminal doors, waving both arms the way she always had since we were kids, I understood something I couldn't see that day in the parking lot when Maria first told me to check the cameras. The video hadn't destroyed my life. It had revealed the truth before I lost even more years to a lie. Sometimes the hardest moments are the ones that quietly set us free. If a moment like that has ever changed the direction of your life, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of yourself, and never underestimate the quiet strength that comes from choosing honesty over anger.